Reflexive and intensive pronouns. First, we need to review what a pronoun is. A pronoun is a word that stands in the place of another noun to help keep our writing clear and concise. Instead of saying, Mrs. Underwood believes Mrs. Underwood can teach Mrs. Underwood's scholars, we can use pronouns to say, Mrs. Underwood believes she can teach her scholars. There are many types of pronouns, however, we are focusing on two types that use the same list of pronouns but have different functions in a sentence. Let's focus on reflexive pronouns first. They include the pronouns myself, ourselves, yourself, yourselves, themselves, herself, himself, and itself. Reflexive pronouns refer directly back to the subject of the sentence. They are necessary to the meaning of the sentence. If you take the pronoun out, the sentence will no longer make sense. A way to remember reflexive pronouns is to think about the doctor checking your reflexes at a doctor's appointment. If the doctor uses the hammer at your knee, and you do not automatically respond with your leg kicking out, the doctor may think something is wrong. Reflexive pronouns are like that. If you take them out of the sentence is wrong. Let's look at some examples of reflexive pronouns together.
When looking at this sentence, if I took out the themselves, the sentence would read, the football players considered warriors. So the question you'd be left with considered who to be warriors. So therefore, themselves is necessary and is a reflexive pronoun. When looking at this example, it says the cheerleader is acting like herself again. If I take this out and read it, it would say the cheerleader is acting like again. And so the reader would ask yourself, or you would ask yourself, is acting like who again? So therefore, herself is necessary for us to understand that she's the one who's acting like herself again, and it's a reflexive pronoun. And one more for good measure. If we read this one, it would say Carson earned a reward for himself. If we took out the himself, it would just end with Carson earned a reward for. So again, we'd be left with earned a reward for whom. So therefore, we know that himself is a reflexive pronoun and is necessary to the sentence.
Now let's focus on intensive pronouns. Intensive pronouns use the same list as reflexive pronouns. While reflexive pronouns are necessary to the sentence's meaning, intensive pronouns are not necessary. You can take the intensive pronoun out and the meaning stays the same. One way to help remember the difference is that intensive pronouns are the steroids of pronouns. They only intensify the original noun they are referring to. A person can still get strong without steroids. A sentence can still function without an intensive pronoun. Let's look at some examples of intensive pronouns.
We're going to use the same process here for intensive pronouns that we did for reflexive pronouns. So if I took this out where it says Kara designed the costumes herself for the movie Twilight, if I changed it and took it out and I read Kara designed the costumes for the movie Twilight, we would still understand that Kara actually did the designing of the costumes. Therefore, by taking this out, it only intensifies the fact that Kara was the one who did it and is an intensive pronoun. So using the same process, if I read this one without the myself in there, it would say I sold more than 50 tickets for the movie. So either way, I understand I sold it or I myself sold those tickets. So therefore, it's an intensive pronoun because if I take it out, it is no longer necessary and does not change the meaning of the sentence. And here, this sentence, you'll see the Twilight characters themselves were excited about the film debut. If I take out themselves and read the sentence, the Twilight characters were excited about the film debut, I still understand that they are the characters and they are excited. So therefore, it doesn't change the meaning of the sentence and is an intensive pronoun.
Now let's see if we can tell the difference between reflexive pronouns and intensive pronouns.
So we're going to play a little game I like to call stand and defend. So whether you're in the classroom or at home, if you think that the bolded, underlined pronoun is either an intensive or reflexive pronoun. If you think it's reflexive, you'll stand up. If you think it's intensive, you'll sit down, and then we'll check to see if you are correct. So the first one says, people have been telling themselves the story of Snow White for centuries. So either stand up if you think it's reflexive, or sit down if you think it's intensive. Hopefully you find yourself sitting down, because if I take this out, we still know that people have been telling the story of Snow White for centuries and is not necessary and is an intensive pronoun. Reading this sentence, the queen knew that she herself was not as beautiful as Snow White. So ask yourself, is it a reflexive pronoun? Is it necessary to the sentence? If so, stand up. If you do not think it is necessary and it does not change the meaning of the sentence, stay sitting and know that it is an intensive pronoun. You should be sitting down, because if we take that out, the sentence still does make sense, and therefore it is intensive. Same process, read through the sentence. The queen talked herself into getting rid of Snow White. If you can take it out and it still makes sense, it's intensive and you should be sitting down. If you feel like it is reflexive and necessary, you should be standing up. You should be standing up, because if I took the sentence out, it would say the queen talked into getting rid of Snow White. So you would ask yourself, talk to who into getting rid of Snow White? So therefore it is reflexive and necessary. Read through the sentence and determine if it is the himself is a reflexive pronoun and necessary. If so, stand up. If you think it is intensive and not necessary, please sit down. You should be sitting down. When you read the sentence without it, she told one of her men to kill Snow White, but the hunter knew he could not do it. We still understand that the hunter is the one who did not know, so therefore it is intensive and not necessary. Let's try another. So read the sentence and determine if we take out the pronoun, if it is reflexive, you would not be able to make sense anymore, or if it's intensive, the sentence will still make sense. You should find yourself standing up, because when you read the sentence, he told Snow White, save, never return to the castle. You would wonder, save what? There is no, that's just a verb. There is no object. So therefore it is reflexive and necessary. Let's try one more. Again, reread through the sentence and determine if yourself is necessary, meaning it's a reflexive pronoun, or if you can take it out and the sentence still makes sense, it would be intensive and you may sit down. You should be sitting down. It is, of course, intensive, meaning not necessary, because I'm sure you can finish the story. Hint, there's a happily ever after. You can finish that story because it is an intensive pronoun and you don't need to intensify it with the yourself to still have it make sense. Now that you are sitting down, let's just quickly again review that reflexive pronouns are necessary. Just like going to the doctor is going to want to see your reflexes work, a sentence using a reflexive pronoun does need it to stay in for it to make sense. And our intensive pronouns, our steroid of the pronouns, are not necessary to make the sentence make sense, and therefore they are intensive pronouns.